Abba Yisrael, the Rav, the Rebbe to make a sim after every sefer. Today we complete Kedusha, and Yom Hashem tomorrow we start Aploe. So we have the honor today to have our Mordasa from the Shul, Harav Achoti, Harav Dovער הכהן Bell is going to make the סיום and Aschole. And I want to tell you that this was a last minute note. The person who was supposed to make the סיום, some kind of emergency happened, he couldn't come. And Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Bell took upon himself to do it. Shkoyach Bell. Everyone, please come sit around. Dr. Chaim.
I did all the work in the Rambam. I did all the work. Because the three halachas, the fifth sefer is sefer Kedusha, and the three sections are Hilchas Asurabiyah, and Hilchas Macholas Asuras, and Hilchas Shchita. And the last parak of Hilchas Shchita deals with the mitzvah of Kisa Adam. The last halacha, the Rambam says, "K'shmachasel yachaseh baragli, ela biyodei or basakin or bakli." When you cover the blood after the shchita, you shouldn't use your foot. You should do it with your hand, or with a knife, or with some sort of keli, whatever. By kafaras would use feathers from the. Kadesh lo yinag minig bizoyim b'mitzvahs. You bezuyas olav, and the reason that you shouldn't use your foot, which would be a logical way to do it, because the blood is bepashtus on the floor, and you have offer on the bottom, and then you have the blood, and you cover it with offer on the top. But you shouldn't use your foot, because you shouldn't treat mitzvahs in a shameful way, and then mitzvahs themselves will become bezuyas olav. Because the honor is not to the mitzvah itself. You're not honoring the mitzvah, you're honoring the mitzvah mitzvah, the one that gave us the mitzvah, so it's an honor for Hashem, so it shouldn't be treated in a disrespectful manner. And Hashem saved us from groping in the darkness, and He arranged for us the mitzvahs that they should function for the Jewish people as a light, l'yasher, two different girsos, ha'maisrim ha'ma'akshim, in order to straighten out the crooked paths, ve'er leheres nesivas ha'yesher, and to provide us light in order to show us the proper, straightforward path. V'keinu amen, and so too it says in Tilim, Kuf Yutes, ner l'ragli devarecha, that your words are a light to my feet, ve'er nesivasi, and they're light to all of my paths. Brich Rachmana the Sion, Nimmer Sefer Chamishim, Bezer Shindal Yud, Min Rakim Shal Sefer Zeh, Shleisha Bachamishim, Hilchas Asurabiyah, Shnaim Vestin Prakim, Hilchas Machal Sasura, Shiva Asa Prakim, Hilchas Shchita, Arba Asa Prakim. I take a piece of a Sikh Nebbe, but first maybe to make the Haskalah, the next Sefer, Sefer Haflah. So like all the Svarim, it's only from the Kisvi Ateiman that all the Svarim Rambam, he begins with B'Shem Hashem Ke'eleilam. All of the Rambam Svarim or Nevuchim and all the Svarim, he begins with this pasuk that from Avram Avinu B'Shem Hashem Ke'eleilam, and then he starts with the pasuk Nidves Pi Neseinu Hashem Mishpatech Lamdeini, which Nidves Pi, what comes out of the mouth, is about Sefer Shishiv or Sefer Haflah, which deals with verbal pronouncements. So all the laws of swearing and the laws of vows and and it starts off in Parak Aleph, the four different types of shvuos. Arba min shvuos hain, shvuos bitu, shvuos shov, shvuos ipikod, and shvuos aedus. And he goes through and explains that he's going to go through which ones he's doing here and which ones he's doing later. Just to stay up, there's a very geschmack sichen called the sichas chelik lamed zayin about why of all the places. So we see this is the source that we learned that the mitzvah should not be treated in a shameful manner is taught in the mitzvah Kisa Adam, and that source of that is in the Gemara and Shabbos Chav Beis. So it learns that's where the limud comes from. It's the Rambam source for bringing this out over here. The Lashon HaGemara is avun the chul adam. literally the father, the source for all other mitzvahs, that they have to be treated in a respectful manner, is the source of all of it is dam. So we learn out from dam all the others. So the Rebbe asks, why does it say dam? The avun, the chulon should be kisa dam. The dam is not the mitzvah. The kisa dam is the mitzvah. Why does it say avun, the chulon dam? So Rebbe's masbir, vayfen nifla, what is it? Why is the Gemara and consequently the Rambam, and he teaches that out in the words of the Rambam, that there are three things that blood could function as, and all of these things cover all of the mitzvahs, and that's why avun the chul dam, because dam itself contains within it the potential for all the three categories of mitzvahs. So Rebbe explains, first of all, he's makdim with the Ramban. The Ramban explains why is it kisi adam is only on a chaya va'of and not on a behema. There's no kisi adam by a ox, only by a deer, the chayas and birds. So the Ramban says that korbanos come from behemoths and they don't come from a chaya. There's no such thing as a korban based on mitzvah for a chaya. And birds, you have a few exceptions to the rule, but in general, it's not that they have a large choice and a large number of carbonates that birds are brought as a carbon. In general, birds are not brought as a carbon. Both a chay and knife are not brought as a carbon, and therefore, since the blood of a carbon is kedusha, so therefore it doesn't need to be covered. So in general, dam is the union of hislavus and kach and warmth. So that if it's used for a carbon, it's in Yonei Kedusha, so it shouldn't be covered. If you have a bren in Yonei Kedusha, so that's nothing to be covered over. That's something that should be what the ganze takef. So why should you cover that? And then when it comes chulin, you can have a behemoth, there's a shechter, it's not as a carbon. Oh look, we don't have carbonas today, but nevertheless, since this type of animal is also designated as a carbon, so at least it's in the same category, so you don't cover the blood there either. But when it comes a chayav va'of, which is stomach can't be used as a carbon, so that's such a thing that sort of kach has to be covered. So the Rebbe brings out there's three different types of mitzvahs that we have in general. Sumera, that you have things which are also dvarim asurim, and you have to keep away from them, and that corresponds to the lowest level. The things that you have to keep away from, the things that are not holy. So the chayav va'of cannot be used as a carbon, so then the blood you have to cover it. And that's the Lisa said you have to keep away from completely. Then we have the divrei reshus, that it's you could use it like this, you could use it like that, and that's the intermediate category, which is the blood of chulin. It could be a behema, but since it has the potential to be used for good, so then you don't have to cover that either. And then you have mitzvahs that are l'chatchila kedusha, tefillin, other things which are all kulei kedusha, and that corresponds to the carbon. And the Rebbe brings it out in the Lashon HaRambam, where the Rambam quotes the psukim at the end. So he says it first. The Rambam explains it, and then he brings the pasuk. So he explains, "V'hitzilanu milamashesh pacheshak." So the Hashem gave us the mitzvahs to prevent us from groping around in the darkness. That corresponds to the mitzvah Sleisa said, to keep us away from Dvarim Asurim, and that's in from Cheshach. Then you have Dvarim Mutarim, where you could use it in a negative way. You have Bechira Chavsha, so you use it in L'Shem Shamayim. So that's Orach HaYisam Ner L'Yisrael L'Yasher HaMa'akshim. So you have a potential crooked path, and the Eibusha gave us the Torah to straighten out the crooked path, that we should use these things l'shem shamayim. And then we have things which l'chtchila kadusha, va'er l'heres, nesivas hayesher, that he provided the mitzvahs as pure light in order to show us the straightforward path, and brings the pasuk neil l'ragli d'varecha va'er l'nisivasi. We should see Eirishal Mashiach take off from Yad Mamish and go from Kedusha to the Hafla, and we'll have the announcement, Hine Mashiach.
Right after this, we're going to have the Shir, Hine Mashiach Begeule. Come. Shkach Avel, I know that we still it out.